say? And she said, I'm retired. She said, it's on you right now. You do it. I'm retired completely. So that's why she didn't accept any speaking.
I wasn't asking her to come and speak. I was just giving her this award. She's Kesher Wife of the Decade.
Yeah.
And she wrote back in the plural.
Yeah.
In the plural. We, Jonathan and I, are very honored to be.
She always wrote in the plural.
Yes, always. And she signed it, E and J.
Yeah.
And every time I heard from her, E and J.
And that's. I speak in the plural also when I refer to us, and I will continue to do that because as an Ezer Kenegdo, she left an imprint on me. And it's something that I recognize and I value, and I will publicize by using the plural. When you marry your Ezer Kenegdo, it's like Adam and Chava. You're one, but you're also two, equal halves. And I'll continue to refer to myself and me. I hope it's not interpreted as the royal plural, but she was royalty to me.
She was royalty to all of us.
She was my morah. And I learned a really important lesson about the power of women from her. She always told me that women are our future. And I looked at her, typical male, and said, what are you talking about? And she said, we were the ones that stayed true to Hashem with the Egel HaZahav from the beginning. She said, you remember that. So I remember that.
The consolation that, I took her death very hard, as all of Am Yisrael did. But my consolation was that she got a promotion. She was so outstanding as an advocate for you that Hashem said, now you've got to graduate to be an advocate for Am Yisrael.
The funny thing was, or the interesting thing was, when her advocacy for me was indistinguishable from her advocacy for Eretz HaKodesh and Am Yisrael. It was completely indistinguishable. And she was so insistent on having people understand what was involved in the case, because she wanted to generate in people's mind an awareness that we were lost. We have to, she said, we have to defend Eretz HaKodesh with emunah and bitachon. People would come up to her and say, you know, we're writing to the congressmen, we're writing to the senators, we're writing to the presidents, the Rosh Memshalah, this, that. And she said, that's not important. She said, my husband will be brought home when the kos shel tefilos are filled. She said, Hashem is waiting to see who the Jewish people put their faith in. And she said, when that kos is filled, my husband will come home and other things will happen back home. Because she felt that only by demonstrating to Hashem where our ultimate source of salvation comes from, that we will reach the Geula with a kiss rather than a smice. So everything, there was nothing simple with her. Everything. Look, I was sitting with her in the visitation room in prison, and out of nowhere she said, look at your hand. Okay, here's another lesson. I looked at my hand. She said, what do you see? I said, I see my hand. And she said, no, what do you see? And I said, I see my face. She said, very good. Look deeper. What do you see? My bones, my blood. She said, no. She said, what you see is every one of your ancestors going back to Matan Torah in your hand. And they're all sitting in judgment of you. Many of them died al Kiddush Hashem. Many of them suffered greatly for their belief in our faith. So she said, this helps you. This should help you. You can't call your Rav. You can't call me whenever you want. When you're faced with a decision, And living in prison, you're faced with a lot of decisions because it's a completely different society. A very bad society. It's upside down. Good is bad and bad is good. So she said, before you do anything, you look at your hand and you see who's sitting in judgment, and you don't break faith with them because you owe them the next generation. So that's theory. How is it applied? In our unit, with 350 men, there were 4 rooms with toilets. Otherwise, you had to act like an animal in a room this big for 350 people, all open. It was a little, for anybody with a sense of modesty, it was very uncomfortable. So I got called in by the head of the unit, and he said, I have some very good news for you, Pollard. He said, you're going to get a room with a toilet. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, this is great. So I ran and called my Morah. And I said, I have great news. I have my own toilet. And she was quiet. And she said, look at your hand. I knew, oh God. So I looked at my hand and I said, yes. She said, how are you going to daven in a room with a toilet? And I'm looking at my hand, trying to look away. And I said, okay. So I went back to the commander and I said, I'm sorry, I can't take this room. And he looked up at me like I was Meshuggah. I've been waiting 10 years for my own toilet. And he said, why? I said, you have to look at my hand. So this is what she did for me. She taught me to be a Jew.
Wow.
And not a goy.
You know, her letter to you on your birthday in 2010, I mean, it's a 10-page letter, but after she...
That was a short letter, by the way. It was.
So after she was nifter, I sent it around to my neighborhood in the old city of Jerusalem, you know, to the women, the Nasheh. And women wrote back to me, they said, this is the greatest letter I've ever read in my life. And is that letter, as far as you know, still on the website of Justice for Jonathan Pollard?
It could be, I'm not sure.
I think that letter needs to be, because everything, not the thing about the hand in the toilet, but all of her perspective of that she's not a human being with a soul, but she's a soul with a human perspective. Like the way she expressed it, she was a great writer, and I say this as a writer. I'm a writer.
I know.
You know, she was a great writer, and that letter I think should be just, you know, talk about her teaching. That letter should get out there to the whole world, because it's
the message that I need to get out was what she left me with, and what was that? She left me with the reassurance that there is such a thing as a neshama, that there is such a thing as shomayim, and there is such a thing as a geula shlema, and that we have the tools within all of us necessary to accelerate the coming of Moshiach in the right way, with a kiss, with our emunah and our bitachon.
Amen.
Amen. Selah.